Here we go. Now you got Spreaker, folks. Boy, here I thought I did everything right. Welcome to the Alaskan in chat, Mary Brockman in chat, and Mike in chat as well. But Ron has additionally served for over 25 years as a news anchor in a bunch of Midwest markets, including some pretty damn big markets like Cleveland and Detroit. He's been a guest on television, radio. He's had a bunch of articles written about him throughout the U.S., including in the Detroit News, Headway Magazine, Houston, and The Call and Post in Cleveland. And this is also rather cool, I say. Ron's broadcasting history includes news anchor in a bunch of major markets like WJMO, WCPN, WGAR Cleveland, WWJ, WJR, and WDTK in Metro Detroit. The only one that I left off was WKRP in Cincinnati. So stop right there. Folks, thank you very much for being here tonight. I'd like to introduce Ron Edwards from the Ron Edwards Experience. How do you do, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. I've heard so many great things about your show, and in fact, I got to listen to a couple of episodes in the past, and I really enjoyed it. And so I'm just humbled and happy to be here, to be a part of your show.
Well, thank you very much. It's now you're in Michigan right now, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes, I am.
There's a 3-hour time difference, if I'm not mistaken also.
Correct.
So,
absolutely.
Like I say, it seems like all my guests are from the East Coast. So the first thing I have to say, which is obligatory, thank you ever so much, sir, for staying up so late, because right now it's 8 minutes after 11 p.m. where you are. So, number one, thanks for doing that. I appreciate it.
Usually I'm up at this hour anyway, so usually writing or doing something like that. So, hey, I'm great. Again, thanks so much.
Well, thank you, sir. You and I share one immediate common thread, terrestrial radio. My first radio shift ever was in the early 1970s, and I remember it to this day. And I'll betcha, Ron Edwards, you remember your very first radio shift. What was it like?
It was fantastic. I was 16 at the time.
Cool. Good for you. Great.
I had entered a little contest at a radio station, and it was like a disc jockey contest. We'd come in, and they'd help us produce a little half-hour show or whatever. And we had to, they put us up for votes. The audience would listen to us, and I had an extreme large number of votes during my time. And they said, because of the feedback, would you like to join our staff on weekends? And, of course, it was like non-belief for me, 16-year-old starting in a major market.
Oh, yeah.
I was just beyond belief. But, of course, I accepted the gig. It was, believe it or not, just reading news, rip and read, basically, on the weekends, doing headlines. And so that's how I started it. We had a high school radio station, WGHS. And so I was doing that regularly, too, and it was just a fun time, man. Starting out in radio, and radio has changed.
Oh, God.
I guess I got in I kind of got in on the tail end. You probably had more years of the fun times of radio. I was in on the tail end of that before it became more corporate, and they took the personality out of radio, and you know how things have evolved. And but the good thing is that I believe that the radio is going to be making a big comeback. It's hit bottom, and there's no way to go but up. And some of the, I call them the revenge of the no-talents that took over, the bean counters that took over the general manager positions of a lot of these stations. Guys who couldn't get on the air, they went into sales, and for some reason when they became corporate, those were the guys they promoted as the program directors and the GMs.
Oh, yeah.
And they squashed on us guys that had a smattering of talent and putting these, we call them milquetoast generals, on the air. And it showed. People, sure, they could enunciate their words and all of that, just like the rest of us, but they had no personality. It was just dry, sort of like Dragnet. I used to call it Dragnet radio. Just the facts, man. But I never lost my love for radio. for instance, how the commentary got started, that was the one thing that I never told another human being that I had the desire to do. I always told people, yes, I'm going to get on the radio, blah, 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 and they were like, yeah, all right. But I always believed I would get into radio, but I never told anyone but God, basically, that I wanted to do an religious notebook. And the reason why was because I was inspired by two people, my dad and Paul Harvey.
Paul Harvey!
Yes.
Who was back from the Midwest, and you would have, being in the Midwest, you would have a much greater chance of coming across Paul Harvey on the airwaves than a lot of other people. So that's a very interesting insight. Thank you.
Yeah. He was on ABC radio throughout America, based in Chicago. And so I would catch him at 8 o'clock every morning before I went to school. Now, mind you, I was an 8-year-old guy starting to listen to Paul Harvey. And what caught me about Paul Harvey was his storytelling. And in that way, he reminded me of my dad. My dad and I would talk a lot, and he had all these funny and fabulous stories, everything ranging from the Second World War and about American history and all of that. Very inspiring fellow, as was Paul Harvey. And when I heard that voice that first time, this is Paul Harvey. Good day.
Oh, yeah.
Age 2, just the whole...
The dude had chops. Man. The dude had big chops.
I said, that was the voice of God. and so I just wanted to do a commentary because I got bored with doing news. I liked doing news. I appreciated it, so I never showed the boredom. But I said, man, this is crazy. They don't allow you to tell the full truth in news.
No.
And I'm like, what's the point? But, people would say things to me, Ron, you always have something to say about whatever. Or you ought to have your own commentary. But I never responded. Never, ever, ever. And so, because I had this, outwardly, yes, I was bold and whatever, but I had this little chicken little inside of me that said, there was a little chicken little voice. Who would listen to a young black guy talking about American issues in a general market sense? Who would listen to you? Blah, blah, blah. So the battle was inward. And yet, when I moved to Michigan, I happened to be a guest on a guy's show. His name was Don Costu, the one and only human being that I met who took on the IRS and defeated them.
Really?
But anyway, oh yeah, guy was a genius. Fabulous constitutional scholar and just great lover of America and all that. You would have loved him. I can tell just from the few words I've heard you speak. You would have loved this guy. But in the middle of the show, he just stopped. He said, "Ron, I got to ask you something. I know you can't come here and be on my show every day. You've got your own thing and all that, but would you be willing to produce a commentary and air it on my show? And I'll run it Monday through Friday, and you can get advertisers for it and whatever."
Perfect.
And I said, and this was on the air, and I was like, whoa. I was so shocked because I never told her. It must have been about 30 seconds of dead air. Like, hello? Hello? And so after I recovered, of course, yes. And so I had to think about a name and all of that. Went home and had a notebook in my hand. I turned on WWJ, the station I was working for, and there's a commentator. I don't even know if he's on anymore because I haven't heard him in recent years. His name was Charles Osgood.
I remember Charles Osgood. Yep.
Yep. And the Osgood file. And I had a notebook in my hand because I was prepared to sit and write a bunch of names and him and haw and go through all of that stuff. And I looked down at the notebook. I said, this has to be very simple. And I just wrote the notebook. And I shut the notebook and went on about my business, and the rest is history. But that's how it started.
Perfect.
And now it's on over, as of this past Monday, on 120 stations.
That's impressive. And as we were speaking before, I found you by going to Melanie Collette, and Melanie's been on the show a bunch of times before, and that's where I saw you, and I looked a little bit further at you, and then we were corresponding back and forth, and one of the things that you said, we're in Sacramento. We broadcast from Sacramento, California, the locus of evil on the entire West Coast, the belly of the beast, the Bill Mill. And you said, if I'm not mistaken, that you're going to be coming somewhere to Sacramento on terrestrial radio fairly soon. Is that correct, sir?
Yes. In fact, the show that carries the commentary, I know Sacramento is one of the markets we're picking up soon. We just went on Denver, our 91st station, last week. And then last night, they did this test satellite. They put us on satellite, and that brought it up to about 120 stations. And I know Monday it's official, so the minimum will be about 120 stations. And by next spring, no less than about 200 to 250. That's just on that show, but it's on other independent terrestrials as well, about 7, I guess. And so it's just a blessing. That show, it's based on a station in Tampa. That's the flagship station, the Salem station. And the host really loved it. And it's been on there ever since. And so when I started on the Average Notebook on that show, it was about 35 stations. And that was just 3 years ago.
Good.
So,
good God,
it's been
man.
a blessing.
That's great. Congratulations to you. Are definitely in order. You are on triple digits. There aren't that many folks that are on triple digit stations around the United States. Everything used to be regional. Oh, my God. I don't know if you started back, but when I started, I first started at WWSU. I was in Ohio for a while. That's where I went to college initially. And then I went
okay. Where in Ohio?
I went, we lived on base at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Okay.
And
you were at the other opposite end. I grew up in Cleveland.
And I went to Wright State University. It had just opened. I transitioned. I went to, WING, the AM rocker in Dayton. Then I came back to California, and I had air shifts on like KERS, KEG, KNDE, KOBO in Yuba City, and then I went to KFBK. And I stayed on KFBK for a bunch of time. I did traffic there, FM programming, news editing. I cut my chops in the production room. I met Morton Downey there.
Wow.
This is how old this ancient fart is, Ron Edwards. I started my stuff on all back. I don't know what I don't remember what I had back in the W's back there, but on the West Coast, all we had was Sparta equipment, Sparta cart decks, Sparta boards, etc., Sparta turntables. Everything was Sparta, and if you went into the production room, you had Ampex reel-to-reel tape recorders, and if you wanted to edit any of your sound, you put it in the sound block, you put it in the tape block, and you pulled out your Mark I Model 1 razor blade, and you had two choices. You could make a completely vertical cut, which was a butt cut, as it used to be called, or you could make a diagonal cut and make the transition that whatever your editing was, make it a little bit smoother. But my God, we had a tape bin full of a ton of cut tapes. And that's what you did. You had a roll of white tape, and you'd make your various edits, and you physically taped tape to make your edits. It's like back in the Jurassic era. But that's what I grew up. I loved that stuff. I loved it. I loved being in the production room. I loved being in radio, and then, well, back here, I don't know what it's like where you are. You had to know people because you had to be at KFPK. You had to be in the IBEW, which is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And you had to be sponsored. To be sponsored, you had to know all the right people. Well, I didn't know all the right people, so I kind of left radio, and then I went into law enforcement and all that kind of stuff. Did you get in on the cusp or the middle or the end of where you had to edit cutting tape with a razor blade?
It was towards the end, but we did do that. We did cut our teeth on that. In fact, do you remember having to take your third class license test?
Yeah, good God,
and what really pissed me off is that I think we were the last ones. Right, I think the next year after we got ours, the requirement was dropped.
Yeah, I had to get my third to be on the smaller stations. And then if I actually wanted to sit in the sound booth at KFBK, which was all customized, there was a dude named Dick Francis who cobbled all that stuff together. He built the KFBK board back at 21st and Q. What a crazy guy. Anyway, all of that equipment, all of that cutting, that splicing, man, those were the halcyon days that... heavy sigh, but it's all digital now, and I'm looking at 6 screens in front of me for a stupid little winky show just like mine. But Ron, I love radio. I started in radio. I did law enforcement for 41 years, and the reason I went back is because I could. I found the guys at SHR. This is when I left KFBK. Russ Francis, the engineer who was there, gave me this ancient RCA 44BX microphone, which is the classic perforated hole kind of microphone. And I found it before I started at SHR in 2016. And after 40 years, plus that thing was probably at least 20 years old, it worked. I was shocked. Do you love radio, Ron Edwards? Do you love it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's in my blood, and it's something I wanted to do ever since I found out its existence. I really did. I mean, I studied the history of it, going all the way back to, of course, the founding father, Marconi, and I just loved it. It was just something. And then my high school in Cleveland had it was a small, I think it was like 50 watts or whatever, radio station, and it was FM. WGHS. That was a fun time. I'm telling you. But we used to get gigs out of that, and host talent shows and get paid to do it, and this, that, and the other. So us little high school guys thought we were big stuff, and it was fun, man. But at the same time, though it was a lot of fun, you had to know what you were doing at the same time.
Yes, you did.
And you had to care, about it. It was really an art form. It was really something because you were on radio to be an entertainer. You were there to attract an audience and keep an audience and make people laugh, make them cry when it was necessary. And during the Christmas season, the Christmas music, you have to start cataloging in September. And it was just fun, man. It was, and unfortunately, I was on the tail end of that. And, older guys that were in it a much longer time. And then you hear about these legendary radio stations. I wish I could have worked at one of them, like WABC with Cousin Brucey, or CKLW in Windsor, Detroit, or KHJ Los Angeles.
Oh,
Bill
yeah.
Drake. I mean, the jingles and all of that stuff.
Oh.
Keener Radio in Detroit, and WGAR in Cleveland, which was, the flagship station of Nationwide Communications, Nationwide Insurance. But Chick Watkins, you might have heard of him. He was a great music promoter.
Yep.
Not promoter, I mean, what do you call the guys? The programmer.
Right.
And he was there at WGAR when I was there. And this guy his music layout, everything from Earth, Wind, and Fire to my favorites, the Rolling Stones, and just The Who. But he was an older guy, but he just knew what to do and how to oh my God. And then when he left Cleveland had a lot of great guys in radio, all the way back to Alan Freed and all of that stuff. You read that history, and the other guy that came from Cleveland. He went to New York also. Oh gosh, if I remembered his name, if I could. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. But you would remember him. He was. He may still be on.
I'm going to reveal my age for the first time in a long time. This is how old I am, Ron Edwards.
Okay.
My brother on a little tube radio in Sacramento in the 60s, I can remember listening to XERB. And I can remember listening to original broadcasts of Wolfman Jack from Mexico.
Oh, my God.
My brothers would turn on the show. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to get into radio. Look, I can tell you right now, we got about 3 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break. I can tell you right now, I would love to continue on this. Dude, you are a guy that I can sit down with and have a beer or something like that.
Forever.
And I could, I have so many questions and so much stuff. An hour, I can tell you, is not going to be able to cover it. Number one, I got to ask you right now, I'm sort of bigfooting myself. Can you come back sometime? Because there's more stuff that I would love to talk to you about, but I'm going to go into some other things.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to come back.
you got to come back because there's so many things that we could talk about. But first this, before the break, and I apologize, before we go any further, I apologize. I am remiss in not asking you this. Please tell us where you can be found on social media, on various websites, and, of course, your radio show, please.
Of course, on Twitter, we'll start there at the Ron Edwards on Twitter. Facebook, Friends of the Edwards Notebook, and that page was started by a listener fan of the Edwards Notebook. And also on Facebook, there's a Ron Edwards public figure page, and of course the regular standard Facebook, my original Facebook page. So I've got 3 of those. Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You said where I can. You said my social media and my own website, theronedwards.com.
Okay.
Yep. That's my website and social media. Yep.
Okay. Folks, we're going to take a break here in about another minute or so. When we come back, I found something that Ron had written recently, and it resonated with me a whole bunch. And obviously it resonates with him, and it's going to lead me to a bunch of questions about this article and about Ron himself. And I think it's going to reveal a whole lot about who you are. And then what I'd like to do is maybe go back and chat a little bit about where you were born, where you were raised, that kind of thing. And then I have kind of a question that I ask all the first-time people that I have in the show, and that's basically, there are pivotal moments in the lives of every individual where your life is going in one direction, something happens, and you find yourself moving in almost an unforeseen direction, and you didn't see it coming. I had a ton of those. One of them was getting into law enforcement itself, and then I had a bunch of critical incidents when I was in law enforcement. But folks, when we come back, we're talking to Ron Edwards of the Ron Edwards Experience. And when we come back, I'd like to read the article that Ron has written and ask him about that. Ask him about some pivotal moments in his life, and then we're going to get into Ron Edwards a little bit more deeply. We're going to go into faith. We're going to go into politics. So, folks, don't go anywhere. We're talking to Ron Edwards. He's going to be here for the full hour. You're listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin. That is I right here on the SHR Media Network. Don't go anywhere, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics,
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to myself, moi, the bloviating Zeppelin, right here live and direct in the SHR Media sumptuous and palatial SHR Media studios, 2 miles east, the locus of evil, broadcasting behind enemy lines in California, where late at night, when I get out of here, I go through that door on the left and I smell, the air will be redolent of sulfur and brimstone and evil from the Capitol building in California. Folks, we're talking to Ron Edwards, and I found an article that he had written that impressed me quite a bit, and obviously it informs him, and it informed me, thanks to Mike in chat, Mary in chat, Dan Butchers in chat, the Alaskan, and 2 viewers, and other people that I cannot mention at this point. This is something that Ron wrote on early in November this year. And it's called Why the Political Left Hopes You Abandon Faith in Christ. And he writes, the leftist war against Christianity, common decency, America, good education, the 2 original genders, straight men, Trump, black Americans who left the Democrat Party plantation. Sorry, that's Democrat, that's me, not Ron. Women who appreciate their husbands, etc., seems to be never-ending. But of course, there's actually good reason for that, going all the way back to the founding of this republic. There have been those, for example, the loyalists, who have sought to undermine the divinely inspired concept of liberty and one nation under God. For decades, much like parasites invading a healthy body to destroy it, leftists have poisoned the government school system via indoctrination and have caused a sickening impact on the thinking processes and actions of many Americans. Despite the preponderance of evidence to the contrary, American students in both government schools, colleges, and universities have become convinced that communism is the way to go, and that most of the founding fathers were evil, non-Christian racists. But clearly, there was a predominant Christian consensus in colonial America that shaped the founders' thinking and the writing of the founding documents and laws resulting in the republic that we have today, but can lose if we don't stem the bigoted leftist tide against what is good for we the people. The Declaration of Independence identified the source of all authority and rights as their creator, and then accentuated that individual rights were God-given. Folks, that's important. Our rights were God-given, not from government, not man-made, and handed out by big government. Thus, there would be no king or established religion to stand in the way of human liberty or dignity uniquely tied to Judeo-Christian ideals. While knowledgeable historians do not limit the Founding Fathers to the 55 delegates of the Constitutional Convention, this core group of men represented the religious Christian sentiments of those who shaped the political foundation of our republic. As a matter of public record, and I found this very interesting, Ron, the delegates included 28 Episcopalians, 8 Presbyterians, 7 Congregationalists, 2 Lutherans, 2 Dutch Reformed, 2 Methodists, 2 Roman Catholics, 1 unknown, and 3 deists. And those happen to be those who believe in an impersonal God that give the world its initial impetus, but then left it to run its course. A full 93% were members of Christian churches, and all were deeply influenced by a biblical view of mankind and government. A study of the founders' last will and testaments provides convincing declarations of the strong religious beliefs among so many of them. Add to that their personal writings concerning their faith in Christ, plus their leadership roles in establishing and guiding numerous biblical societies, plus their service in active ministries, and evidence is overwhelming. In a joint statement, John Adams and John Hancock wrote, "We recognize no sovereign but God and no king but Jesus." Second President John Adams noted, "The general principles upon which the founders achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity, and will avow that I believed and now believe that those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and attributes of God. He who made all men hath made truths necessary to human happiness obvious to all. Our forefathers opened the Bible to all." That's from Samuel Adams, signer of the Declaration of Independence. Patrick Henry, governor of Virginia, said, "It cannot be emphasized too clearly and too often that this nation was founded not by religionists but by Christians, not on religion but on the gospel of Jesus Christ." Henry Knox, a Revolutionary War general, said, "To the general head of the universe, to that great and tremendous Jehovah who created the universal frame of nature, worlds, and systems in number infinite, to this awfully sublime being I do resign my spirit with unlimited confidence of his mercy and protection." This is just a minute smattering of quotes from the vast majority of the founders who supported and encouraged the fruitful benefits of Christian principles and a firm belief in God. Only demented, determined, bigoted deniers on the left continue to peddle their denials as truth to generation after generation of students in order to fundamentally change America into something more akin to Europe, China, Venezuela, or anything other than the land of liberty and justice for all. In fact, that is one of the reasons why the political left hopes that you abandon or reject faith in Christ. My fellow Americans, seek ye the truth for yourself and be a part of making America greater than she has ever been. The republic you help to save could be your own. And you finally write, God bless you, God bless America, and may America bless God. And I've heard that before on Ken McClinton's show. Anyway, that's, it seems to me that you have no problem whatsoever in terms of delineating good versus bad. And so with that, I have to ask, is it your faith that drives you?
It is so, my faith that drives me. And that faith was first explained to me in depth by my dad. And by a very wonderful aunt of mine. Both of them were reasonably educated individuals, and they weren't the typical religion-type people that I would see, and which basically turned me off from even wanting to go to a church or be involved in church. But because they showed me from a direction that I could understand. In fact, my dad used the Founding Fathers as a tool to, I guess, build a foundation of my own faith. And so, because I had a very good impression of the country, thanks to my dad, as far as teaching me the history, and then once he revealed to me the preponderance of faith that these guys had, and studies that I did on my own that go all the way back to Moses. A lot of people don't know that the beginning of personal freedom, or of the concept of the exercising of personal freedom and liberty, which basically liberty is freedom with responsibility,
yes,
began with the children of Israel. You remember the story about when Moses and his people, they escaped Egypt, and they were out in the desert. And Moses was just overwhelmed by all the people, all of them lined up. And you're talking about 3 million people. Talk about wearing a guy out. Everyone had a problem. This group, that family, this, whatever, criminal activity, just the whole 9 yards, an entire civilization coming to one man, one central figure to solve all their problems. Well, then he happened upon, of course, Jethro, his father-in-law, who had a little wisdom and said, hey, Moses, you'll be dead in a month just from talking. If you try to solve all of these people's problems, they will not stop until you're dead. And he said, find people of character, of good character, good moral character, to quote the man, and give them responsibility of leadership in groups of different sizes based upon the situation. They basically broke it down to groups of 50. There were larger groups, of course, with greater responsibility. It was set up similarly to the type of society we have today. There were people that had responsibility. That was for the first time that there was a concept that people themselves were made to realize that they had skin in the game and that they had personal responsibility to make the society go. It wasn't all about a personal, one figure, sort of like a king or whatever. That it was like they had to become more responsible for their own actions, for their own good, and also to maintain their faith themselves in their God. Something that certain religions kind of took away. One of the largest religions in the world. You have these individuals who say, come to me, and I hear from God. Give me your confessions. And they sit behind a little screen. And what is it, my son? What have you done? Rather than going to God directly and reading the Bible for themselves. And that's what really got Europe into the craziness that they've been in and still are swirling into this day. People were not conditioned to think for themselves, to do for themselves. They blessed with the concept of rational self-interest, which Ryan Rand really focused on. Even though she was not a believer, she understood that part, a rational self-interest. And if you are morally grounded and you couple that with rational self-interest, you understand that the better you are, the better your fellow man can be, because you'll be in a better position to help someone, even if it's only through example. And that is a total anathema to what the world generally teaches or passes down. And unfortunately, in this country, you have the modern-day bigots, the leftists, who are trying to take that away. This is why they go after Christianity, real Christianity, that is. Why they go after our Constitution, a limited form of government, way of life. That's why they go after free market economics, because that is also based upon personal responsibility.
Yep.
And for me, it's a lot easier, and I believe you would agree with this. It is a lot easier for me or yourself to be responsible for yourself, to get up, run a business, or get a job, or do both in some cases, and run with your idea. And based upon the skill set that God gave you, you find your formative years are meant to find out your purpose in this life. Everyone was born with a purpose of greatness. And the United States of America was the first country to officially make that a part of its writings, but those practices were in place all the way back to the children of Israel. And mankind tried to squelch that out. That's why you had the Dark Ages, which set men back, I believe, 1,000 years. I believe if we did not have those Middle or Dark Ages, I think we would have had airplanes and things of that nature 1,000 years before, at least a few hundred years sooner. We might have been having cars and things like that in the 1700s, but because of the encroachment of stopping the growth of mankind and stamping out those original concepts that were first recognized amongst the children of Israel and in Rome to a certain degree. Rome was way ahead of its time in that time period, running water and all those kinds of things. There were, for instance, I don't know if you could call them scientists, but people in Roman times, they found clay figures that, sometimes like Galileo, and he wasn't during Roman times, but people way back, they would sit back and either draw pictures or make clay figures of figurines of the concept of a vehicle without horses or something that could fly and things of that nature. And I really believe if we did not have the Dark Ages, we would have been having those things in motion before the 1800s.
I wouldn't disagree in the slightest. Everybody who thinks that, for example, Native Americans are absolutely altruistic, just saying the stuff that you've been saying, there are so many different directions I could go with this, but one of the first stupid things that pops into my brain is, Native Americans are so wonderful. They're so in tune with nature. Well, they killed the hell out of each other, and trust me, if they'd gone through their own Bronze Age and Industrial Age first, they would have built ships, gone across the pond, and kicked the butt of all the Europeans, because that's what man does. Timing is everything. But again, I want to emphasize to everybody listening, and also the thing that you said that was in the article that too many people need to realize but don't, is that our rights in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, our founding documents, are given to us by God, not from government. And the corollary is that leftists, what I call the LDAM, leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots, would have you believe that our rights are given to us willingly by government. But what government wants to do is it wants to take away your rights, and then if it deigns to sell them back to you at a much higher price, at a much higher, costlier price. Europe, you mentioned Europe. Europe is on the cusp of being done. And over here in the United States, I think you believe fervently that it's your job, and I believe it's my job, to not have what I call historical Alzheimer's. And we need to learn a lesson from Europe. We need to learn and see what's occurring in Europe right now. And the American media maggots are not telling us, for example, that the riots in France are over, they're just rioting. Well, it's over fuel prices and the fact that they don't want to have to pay for the climate change. And then, yes, you're right, it expanded beyond that because now it's pushback to the general leftist memes of much of what's occurring in France, and now it's expanding over to the Netherlands. This is pushback.
And it's inspired a lot of that, believe it or not. A lot of Americans don't want to admit this, but a lot of that has been inspired by Trump. There are rioters over there saying, "We want Trump. We want Trump."
Yes.
So these people that hate on Mr. Trump and hate on this country, look at the for instance, the Black Lives Matter. And all these people that, so-called minorities that hate this country with a passion. I didn't learn this until I moved to Michigan, and I saw for the first time an American city that was just ugly everywhere, with the exception of maybe a street here or a house there or whatever. But it was just generally very, very depressing. And you have this population of people that just hate, with a brutal hatred of this country, and I couldn't understand why there's so many of them. And it can't, and because I said, well, wait a minute. On one hand, they complain about the conditions, they blame Whitey and this, that, and the other. But yet, when I confront them and say, well, wait a minute, Whitey hasn't been running this city for 5 decades.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what are you talking about? You produced the worst conditions. You're the first generation under black rule that has been going backwards. People don't know that during the 40s, 50s, and the 60s, the black race was moving ahead as a whole, economically anyway, despite Jim Crow and all those evil Democrat Party practices. They were moving ahead, pursuing the American dream. For instance, in the 1950s, 44% of black Americans owned small businesses. Well, guess what the percentage is today? After all the glorious bastardized rights movement, it's commonly called civil rights.
Right, progress. We've made progress, Ron.
It's 3% now.
Yeah.
3% from 44%. And the thing is, what they didn't catch, the hint that they didn't catch, when Lyndon Baines Johnson said, yeah, okay, you can come to the political table. You niggers can come to the political table, but I'm going to take away your economic power and keep you stupid in that area. And at the same time, you're going to become more bitter, and hateful towards this country, because Lyndon Baines Johnson was like a forerunner to people like Ali Obama and others who are in office now that hate this country, Sheila Lee Jackson, just name them, whomever, Biden. They're all there to destroy this country. They're all now doing to America what was originally done to the black American community. See, this concept of perpetual racism was a big game that they ran on everyone. You read back.
Oh, yeah. LBJ was the most cynical asshole I can think of, who and his great society was built on the backs of he knew and he said. And leftists disdain this quote. He said, I'll have the niggers voting for Democrats for the next 200 years with the Bill of Rights. If that isn't the most cynical, horrible, reprehensible reason for doing that, I can't think of. There's a reason that it was called, the phrase is, the once nuclear black family.
Yeah, and see, this is by design.
It is by design.
they're doing to America generally. Hubert Humphrey warned in 1968 when the out-of-wedlock baby birth in the Black American community was under 30%. And he said once it reaches 30%, it will spiral out of control because that's enough of that ilk that will breed and produce that mentality and just multiply and so on and so on. They'll stop accepting truths, and it just spins out of control. It did. And now I think out-of-wedlock baby births is either approaching or just eclipsing 30% in the general population, the white population. And so now you have, just as you had in the 70s, blacks starting to accept socialism. Now most of your white, at least half of your white students in America are accepting that same anti-American mentality, socialism, with the socialism cherry on top. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, if these people grow up and have babies with this mentality, America will be one big ghetto. Remind me of a song by War. The world is a ghetto. But it's going to be America is a ghetto. If something is not done dramatically to change the education system or to get, I prefer to wake people out of their stupor, and they just take their children out of the system and homeschool, and then tell the people in mass, if you're not going to educate our students, we don't need to bring them to school to be indoctrinated against us, America, God, and everything else that is good. So the hell with you, because they can't arrest everyone and force and throw everyone in jail for not allowing their students, their children, to be indoctrinated and turned into these hateful beasts that, like the ones that were roaming around the streets of America trying to destroy her, like in Charlotte, North Carolina, and elsewhere throughout the country. Ferguson, and I'll never forget when that Ferguson game, those instigators, they went to Cleveland, and they were going to start rioting in downtown Cleveland. Well, the Cleveland police said, okay, you are where you are, but you will not go towards Public Square. You will not go towards Playhouse Square, which is the second largest theater district outside of New York. You will not go here, there, and there. You're stuck here. And they were spitting at the police officers. They were calling them all kinds of names. They said, hey, whatever. But you're not going there or whatever. One guy escaped or whatever, and he went down towards 4th Street. And I don't know where he got the rock or whatever, but he threw it through a restaurant window. He hit a lady in the head. She was a tourist from Arizona. Well, police officers caught up with this. Well, I'll loosely call him a gentleman. Okay. He ended up being sort of like, I guess, a mix between a hamburger and, you remember Gumby?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
He was kind of beaten up a little bit. So, those people, the rest of them did not go. And, in fact, they ended up getting back on their buses and going to another city that would take that crap. What happened was the U.S. Justice or Just Us Department under Eric the Red Holder went after the Cleveland Police Department. And they had to go through this stupid training, tolerance, and all of that. So they said, okay, we'll tell you what. We'll meet you halfway. We're going to protect our downtown. We're going to protect University Circle, which is a beautiful area east of downtown where the Art Museum and all that is, Case Western Reserve, blah, blah, blah. Beautiful area. Okay, but the ghettos, where people live that are the same type of people that came here from Ferguson, that wanted to start some trouble in downtown Cleveland like they did in Baltimore. Okay, we just won't patrol those areas. So guess what? The black ghettos of Cleveland are more unsafe than they've ever been in history. Our downtown is still beautiful and well kept and attracts many a tourist who come there, over 1 million to see the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and another 1 million to our theaters downtown. A wonderful situation, new hotels, blah, blah, blah. It's like a city of two cities. And I predicted that before I left Cleveland years ago. And I told the mayor at the time, I said, Cleveland's going to evolve into a city of two cities. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, the bitter black community is going to be crazy, and it's going to continue the way it's going. And the rest of Cleveland's going to recover and be beautiful again. And you're going to have to protect the good areas from the knuckle draggers. And that is exactly what has happened.
Ron Edwards, I don't know what you're doing for time. It's the top of the hour, time for the top of the hour break. If you got to go, I can understand, but you are more than invited to hang on after the break and continue. But if you got to go, I understand that too. So what would you prefer, sir?
Well, if I'm not boring you and your audience to tears, I'll hang out.
Okay. All righty. How about this? How about we go to the break, and can you maybe do another 15 minutes or so?
Sure. That'll be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Folks, you are listening to Ron Edwards, and you were asking about the people, let's see, Ron, in chat, I'm getting comments like, this gentleman rocks, LBJ was a bad guy, Humphrey was ahead of his time, whites are aborting as fast as blacks, Muslims are not, Cleveland had them on lock, Holder was a commie, crime skyrocketed like Detroit. I'd say, yeah, you're kind of a big hit here tonight, sir. So we're going to go on a break. You're listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin right here on the SHR Media Network. We're going to come back with Ron Edwards.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here from the SHR Media Network studio, which is sumptuous and palatial, while I broadcast behind enemy lines in occupied California. We're talking to Ron Edwards from the Ron Edwards Experience. And Ron, again, thank you very much for hanging on. But I have to tell you some of the comments that have been made in chat about you. They range from, I want to hear you continue to do this. This is awesome. Indeed and fact. There are more questions I'd like to ask. The dude rocks. I am riveted. I'd say you're popular, Ron. I'd say you're popular here tonight.
Well, I'm just honored to be here and to talk with another great American like yourself. Like I said, your show is fun. You really make it easy to communicate. You make the audience feel very comfortable and just wanting to share. It's really a treat, and I can tell you have a long history in radio, sir, and that's a huge compliment. Trust me.
Thank you very kindly, and coming from you, I greatly appreciate it. Okay, show prep, folks. When you're doing a radio show, you'll always have more show prep than you need. Right, Ron? You always have. I'm not kidding, Ron. I have 9 pages of questions for you. I'm on page 2.
That's how you do it.
That is how you do it. Okay, well, let me do this. Maybe this is a good time to go back in time a little bit. So, Ron Edwards, where were you born and what was your childhood like? You talked about your dad being sort of an imprint for you. So, give us a little bit of your background, your schooling, that kind of stuff. Kind of starting at the start for an early Ron Edwards.
Okay, I was born in a little city called Cleveland on the shores of Lake Erie. And I'm sorry.
I got to tell you, I love the hell out of you.
Man, I got it. I got to tell you, I was very blessed with the father that I had. I was adopted by Dad, and I just thank God for him.
God bless him.
He was the man, and it's so funny. Well, before I get into that, because that's a little later, you wanted early stuff, so I'll stick to the subject. Growing up in my early life in Cleveland, it was very idyllic. The neighborhood we lived in was a cross section of Americana. My neighbors were Italians. There was an American Indian family on the corner. There was a lot of Jewish folks. There was a smattering of Jewish folks around. And the things that I remember was how, for example, on Independence Day, If you stood on any corner in our neighborhood, it was just a blaze of red, white, and blue. Everybody flew their flag.
Oh, yeah.
At Christmas time, it was just like, even just our street was a winter wonderland with lights and some neighbors were so close they would join their lights across their driveway that it would just, oh my God. And Dad was, although he was a strict disciplinarian, he was also a fun guy and very knowledgeable. And that was one of his hallmarks. He wanted a son, but they were later in years, like in their 40s or whatever. And so they adopted me, and what a man.
No kidding. Kidding.
He's going to be in a book. I'm writing a book, and he's a big, big part of the book. He, let me put it to you this way. People wanted him to run for government, but he wouldn't run for government office. He just, he was president of the street club. He was a great gardener at the same time. He taught me a lot of things like how to grow food and how to grow fruits and how to merge different types of roses together in one bush and grow them and we'd have our just long talks about America and the greatness of it. And yes, he did tell me about some of the dirty, the dastardly deeds of the racist Democrats and all that. And he was always precise when he talked about that issue even. He did not say America is racist. He was very specific. He talked about the Democrats and what they perpetrated, and he looked at them as like an evil scourge on society. And he was the first to tell me that racism in unto itself was not the end-all when it comes to destructive policies and practices. It was just a tool that could be used against one group while they thought of other destructive methodologies to use against the other segments of society. And it's so funny because later in life when I started doing research on my own, that's exactly what I found. I found that to be very true. Even the usurpation of what he called the bastardized rights movement. Dad called, that was the civil rights movement. And I asked him, I said, why would you call it bastardized rights? He said, it's simple, because those rights, when Martin Luther King started out, he asked for America to go back to its founding document and live according to that and the Constitution. Then he was usurped when communists infiltrated. Through the wives, they first approached the wives and told his wife and Abernathy's wife, if Martin and Abernathy are so sincere about nonviolence, they'll give up their guns. And the wives said, maybe you're right. And so they convinced the wives to convince the men to give up their guns. Now, my father was like, well, you can be as peaceful as Pocahontas, but that doesn't mean you give up your guns. In fact, as Ronald Reagan said later in later years, you ensure peace through strength.
Yes.
And my dad understood that. That's why our house was heavily armed, as was everyone. Everyone had guns, all the dads. And by 10 years of age, I knew where they all were. I knew how to use them. He taught me how to clean them, put them back together. He said, I doubt if you'll ever have to use them in this neighborhood, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared because there's a bigger enemy we have to always be wary of, just in case, and that was big government. And he was talking to me like this at 10 years old. And there was a reason why there was this accelerated knowledge I was getting from him, because by the time I was 12, he passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was like, and the weird thing, and it's documented in my book that I'm putting together, the neighborhood died with him. That year, the last year of his life, all the good neighbors that we knew, the sweet people, man, they all just started moving away. Boom, 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 boom. And ironically, a year and a half before he got sick, we were looking to move. And then all of a sudden he took sick, and that kind of canceled that. And the Woods, all of them, the Rebuses, all of our Italian friends, everyone just moved. And they were replaced by, I call them beasts, dragons, just all these beastly kind of people moved in and replaced all these nice people. And, for the first time in my life, at 12, I'm getting into fights on the way home from school, and just these brutish people, bitter people that moved in and replaced. And it was just I went from an idyllic, leafy community it turned into a hellhole, literally. And it was just by the grace of God that my mom was a teacher, and she was able to get me into a school that was not in that community, which had suddenly gone to hell, and the education quality went to zero, to a zero factor. And so she got me into another school which had the radio station, which had higher curriculum level, which was on par with what would have been there had the neighborhood not changed, but it did. And so I was able to go out of my district. But it was something, man. By the time I got into high school and all that, I was well into knowing what I wanted to do for a career that was broadcasting. I was tempted, though, for a season to go into architectural design because I had a very, very a strong penchant for detail and the ability to draw things. And and to this day, I love cities. I love the skylines, and I love designing buildings. I still draw things like that now. But radio was that first love. Once you got a whiff of that, it doesn't leave you.
No.
And so I went to school, City College in New York, and I fell in love with New York. New York fell in love with me. She was very welcoming. I got jobs doing voiceover work. I was in off-Broadway plays, getting paid very well just to do that.
Nice.
I ended up burning myself out, not through partying, not through just opportunities. I was just like, whoa. And I was like like they say, a child in a candy shop. My candy was just opportunities. You can do this, I can do that. Just because it's all about just my talent, I can do. Oh my gosh! I worked on Wall Street and at Manufacturers Hanover Trust Bank. I was upstairs in the money transfer department, and that's the kind of a position I could have never ever gotten in Cleveland. And Cleveland has some huge banks, but for some reason, those opportunities were not available for people like me. But, whatever. And one of my duties, my first duty, when I got in the morning was always contacting the financial capitals of the world. And there was another fellow that I worked with closely, and we had to keep track of all the billions and trillions of dollars being spent that Manufacturers Hanover Trust had their hands in around the world, loaning for big, massive projects, whether it was in Indonesia or wherever, in London or whatever. It was an exciting position. It was something that, though it was not related to broadcasting, it was, kept me eating while I was in school. And but it was exciting. It was just, New York was such an exciting city. The only reason why I'm not in New York this day is because I got very sick. And they said that I had stomach cancer, and we wanted to do exploratory surgery and this, that, and the other. Well, my gut instinct told me, as bad off as I was, I don't think that's it. Even though I went from 195 pounds down to 119 in one season, and I looked like death warmed over.
Now, how old were you then?
That was 19. because I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, because I lived in New York for 6 years. And 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And because by that time I was working and just in opportunities and plays and it was just beautiful. But I started getting sick. I couldn't go to the gym and work out like I wanted. And whenever I eat, I'd get these pains. But anyway, Mom came up. She flew up. She saw me. She said, "Oh, no, that's what happened to your father, blah, blah, blah."
Oh, boy.
But then sanity kicked in. And we said, well, you know what? We do have the Cleveland Clinic, don't we? And so we got back home. It wasn't anything like that. I was treated within 3 visits, and I never had that problem again. Changed my diet a little bit, tweaked it. I thought I was eating healthy and going to the gym, working out, but with all the stress I was under, though I didn't know I was under stress because I was enjoying myself, but I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. And when you're busy and constantly working, because I've never been a party animal, so what else is there to do but to do what you enjoy in the work world? And so I just worked myself to a tether, basically. And so I went back to Cleveland, and I was in recovery. Next thing you know, I get a phone call from one of the radio stations I worked at. "Oh, we understand you're back home, and we want to know if you want to come in and get back to work." And I'm wondering, how did you know that I was here? Because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to talk to anybody because I wanted to recover and get right back to the Big Apple. And they kept hemming and hawing, "Come on, at least part-time. All you have to do is just we love you, you know. We love your anchoring style and blah, blah, blah." Okay, I'll come in part-time. You twisted my arm.
Yeah.
You twisted my arm
right.
off. So I went back to work for them and enjoyed it. I was the morning anchor, open the mic at 6. I'm off by 10. And leave the station by 1 in the afternoon because, time just flies when you're in radio and you just don't want to leave.
No.
I got to, and then I'd leave there and go to the gym and whatever, go back home. And it was just a cycle I just kept going through. And so after a couple of years, which I thought I would have already been back in New York, by the way. Anyway, next thing you know, I'm contacted by stations in Michigan. Well, lo and behold, my best friend at the time, who had gone and was working in Detroit, had kind of went behind my back and took some recordings of me to stations in Detroit, and I ended up taking a job. Okay, Detroit's bigger than Cleveland. I'll just work my way back to New York. Well, when I got to Detroit, I said, boy, it may be bigger than Cleveland in size, but I tell you, that's it. That's the only way it was bigger than Cleveland. But, but I ended up working here and moved immediately out of the city as soon as I woke up to reality and saw that, oh, wow, it's hell. And got out and moved to Oakland County and been here all these years. Where I live is very nice, but hubba. But anyway, I was working, and then I told you the commentary took off. And I started marketing that, and I've been, that has been a big dream, and so I got that going. And Detroit will either make you bitter or better. And it was a city that was in such a way that it drove me to Jesus, seriously. I said, oh, Lord, I accept you into my heart. Went to Jesus.
So you got to Detroit, basically, because your friend stole your damn air check.
Yeah.
Isn't that how life goes? Like that?
Yeah, it goes and it went. And I met my wife here. Ironic, although she was born here, she wasn't like a Midwestern girl. And so I said, boy, she's really cool. She's like East Coast chicks, really nice. And come to find out, she lived on the East Coast for 10 years. I said, oh, okay, so you got that Midwestern crap bred out of you. I'm sorry, we joke a lot, but, that attitude. And so we the rest, is history, of course. We're married and doing very well. And the thing is, my friend, is that my concern for this country has always been just preeminent in my mind. And this is the greatest country in the history of existence, of human existence.
Absolutely.
Yes, there are some that are a little prettier, like New Zealand and, the beauty of Paris. I've witnessed it.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and what a shame. You would have never gotten me to believe, after seeing it myself, that human beings would be allowed to burn that place. It's something so beautiful to be allowed to be done the way it is done now. It's just mind-boggling. Just like I wouldn't believe it if I wouldn't believe that they would allow people to burn up New York City. It is also one of the great cities of the ages. And but you know what's so fascinating about America? You walk around in cities like New York, and every day I was just so amazed I was there. I never grew complacent being in New York City. I'm looking at these massive buildings every day, just around the corner from around these buildings, and just the massive developments. And I compared it one day to the massive buildings of ancient Egypt, the pyramids, which are also huge and very impressive. But then I said, you look at the massive buildings of ancient Egypt, they were built most likely with slave labor for the glory of a central figure. But there was no benefit to the masses. But yet, each of these buildings, these massive, giant buildings that I lived around in New York, 50-story buildings and 80 stories, whatever, each one filled with thousands of people making a living. I mean, in most cases, making a very good living. And, Random House Publishing was big when I was there. All these companies. But my older sister worked at Random House, and she was doing well. And I'm looking, and just a young lad just thinking like this as I would walk around. And you go to Francis Tavern where George Washington had a beer. And you go to these places, and you're just taken back, and you just imagine what the conversations must have been between people like Madison and Adams,
yes,
and Washington and Jefferson, and Benjamin Rush, the doctor, and oh my gosh, and Benjamin Banneker, who was very, very intelligent, and he photographically remembered Washington, D.C. after L'Enfant, I think that's his name, got angry and took his plans back to France because he got angry. He was offended. I guess his butt wasn't kissed enough. And he rolled up his partridge and left. Well, Benjamin Banneker got a gander of those pictures, of those drawings.
Yeah,
and he
L'Enfant.
photographically remembered them.
Yep.
And he remembered them. And at first, Thomas Jefferson couldn't believe that a black guy was that smart. Well, he proved it, and the rest is history. The city was laid out and built. But even with those kinds of insults, I don't have this stupid bitterness or anything like that against the country, because when I think, for example, let's look at what's going on today. You hear the Negro Thought Police and their liberal white masters always talk about slavery. reparations, things this nation has done to people. Oh, hubba, hubba, hubba. Well, then if you just say, well, since we're concerned about problems, what about the 27 million blacks who were enslaved by Muslims today?
Yes.
What about, you're into victimology.
Yeah, in Africa, currently, today, yes.
Yeah, let's take it to the nth degree. There's no greater form of victimology than 27 million black people that are enslaved now. And what about the women? You feminazis here in America, you talk about women all the time. You've got women so jacked up and against men so much now in Wall Street, the men are stopping communicating with the females on the job and are only congregating with themselves. And if they have to speak to a female, they make sure that someone else is present because they don't want to be accused of being, a man. If they ask a woman out to lunch, that's now considered harassment, just a natural act of following through on attraction. Now that is horrible in the liberal world. Yet the same liberals are okay with the mass murder of innocent babies who cannot even defend themselves.
Well, this is...
the hypocrisy of the left is just
staggering.
Nauseating.
It is absolutely staggering. How do you reconcile, for example, anyone of the LDAM? Well, okay, I'm going to have to stop for a second. It's 2 minutes after the break. That's okay. That's okay. Listen, I would much rather listen to you, okay? And so would everybody else in chat, because I'm watching chat. So I'm going to throw it out there. You can take it and run with it if you want. If you are interested, and everybody in chat definitely is, I'll give you the full 2 hours if you want it. Listen, I got questions, you got answers. If you got the time, I'm more than ready to go with it because everybody is very interested in what it is that you're saying. This is a highly participatory chat room I'm discovering right now. So the offer is out there. Again, if you got to go, CP time, because after all, for gosh sakes, it's like 33 minutes after midnight where you are. Right now it's only 9:30 for me, but it very seriously could be beddy-bye time for everybody on the East Coast.
It is, for some of us. Normally I'm up writing at this time. I write my columns, and some of my best thinking is during these hours, so it's not like this is unusual for me. I can go get some water and come right back, or if you want to go ahead and do your show as you normally would, because I don't want to encroach on what you normally would do.
Listen, Ron, I'm having a hell of a time. The people in chat are having a great time. How about this? Let me throw this out there, and you tell me if you're into play. I'll go to the break, go get some water, slam down some coffee or whatever it is that you're interested in. Take a potty break, because that's what I'm going to do. Hey, listen, when you played radio, there was a reason you played In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida for 11 minutes on a radio station, okay? And I know what that's all about. So how about if we take about it? Exactly. So how about if we go to a break? We all do what's necessary, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk with Ron Edwards of the Ron Edwards Experience. Are you cool with that, sir?
I'm cool. I'm cool, man.
Okay. All right. Thank you, folks. You're listening to Ron Edwards, and I have to say I am having a great time, and I hope you are too. It's the Bloviating Zeppelin right here, live and direct on BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Come right back, please.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic, concealed carry, and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
The new show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capitol, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad. Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you're listening to the bloviating Zeppelins Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct, right here on the SHR Media Network, where I am ensconced within the lovely SHR Media studios, where I'm broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. And where, unfortunately, thank goodness, my mouse is frozen. Okay, everything, if I had a Sparta board in front of me right now, I wouldn't have to worry about the mouse and all this. Okay, finally the mouse decided that it's going to work for me again. Okay, I'm going to play this. I've played this before. But I'm going to play this because this situation happened to me again over the weekend. And I want to ask you, folks, we're talking to Ron Edwards. He's been gracious enough to stick with us, and I greatly appreciate that. But this situation happened to me over the weekend again. And so the reason I'm playing it is because I've been here before, and when I get through, I want to ask Ron, Ron, have you been through this before? Because I know I have a bunch of times.
Women always have more questions than men have answers to. Great example of this. 6-7 months ago, I get a text one day. The text says, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. I walk into the kitchen where my wife is. I said, hey, I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, was he driving? I said, I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were Carol and the kids in the car with him? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were the people in the other car hurt? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. What hospital did they take him to? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, well, you don't know anything. What do you know? I know you need to pray for Tom. I just got a text said he was in a bad wreck.
That happened to me over the weekend. I don't know if it ever happens to you, but I just had to play that.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that is absolutely correct. Let me ask you this. When, I don't know, I'm going to get to the pivotal moments in your life because there were certainly a bunch in mine. But, and I can answer this question like immediately if you were to pose this to me. Can you remember a point, Ron Edwards, when you realized, hey, you know what? I'm a conservative. That's what I am. I know what I am. I'm a conservative. Did some light go off? Was there, from above, was there a, oh, or did you just kind of know that all along?
Well, I know I was, when I think back, I know it was conservative all the time, but that wasn't the term.
Okay.
It was called common sense.
Oh, okay.
It was just the way it was brought, the upbringing. And the funny thing about it, when I saw that the way the country was going, and especially the Democrat Party, it did not match up with what I was taught was good and good for the country. It didn't plug in. I mean, I tried to, for a season, I tried to like Democrats. It was John Kennedy and a few good things he did and got murdered for. Because he was going to expose some real dirt. That's why they took him out in Dallas. At least that's what I believe. But, geez, it really hit me. Okay, pivotal moment. I was in downtown Cleveland. Ronald Reagan was in office.
Okay.
And the Gipper had asked everyone in major cities. He said, well, if everyone in major cities would put candles in your windows to symbolize the battle that was going on in Poland, when Lech Walesa was saying, we're going to extract this nation from the grip of communism. And they did it the smart way, man. When they went on strike, and they said, you know what? Us working feeds the beast, because we are the straw that stirs the drink economically, technically. We produce the wealth. You take too much of our wealth and use it against us through legal edict.
Right.
And so we're going to starve you off for about 21 days. And I remember the Gipper asking Americans to support this. Well, I was walking during Christmas season. It was really beautiful and all that. And I was walking with a couple of buddies of mine. And you get to Public Square, and I see this big circle of people praying and singing songs in Polish. I knew that because I grew up around Polish, and
right.
So,
right.
And it was like, next thing you know, I was in the circle with these people. I was just drawn. I'm crying, and I just was drawn to these people, and they welcomed me into the circle, and I was standing there with them. We were all holding hands and praying, and I'm high schooler, man. It's like, what is he doing? My buddies were like, has he lost his cookies? What is it? I know you talk about stuff, Ron, but because I didn't even say anything. The next thing you know, I was just there in the circle. And they ribbed me about it a little bit, but, I told them, shut up. That's who I am. If you don't like it, lump it. But, and they were so warm and so nice. And they were, at first they were shocked, young black guy breaking into the circle, and grabbing their hands and just joining in. But I understood. I really understood, not from experience, but from what I learned about the importance of liberty and freedom. And I understood our own struggle in this country against the tyranny of Great Britain. I understood what happened under the Maoists in China. I understood when Chiang Kai-shek was stabbed in the back by America, and the Maoists took over, and what happened under Stalin, and so all those thoughts came to mind, and that's why I found myself in that circle. And so I knew then, as a young guy, that I was, okay, I'm one of them. I am truly what's called a conservative. And so, and I never looked back.
The Polish, for those who don't know, are extremely pro-American. I used to be a member of, I can't think of the organization, but being a cop, you could sponsor people from other nations, and they would come across the pond, and they'd live with you. You'd take them out on a ride-along. I had some Germans, and I had some Polish people, and they spoke English pretty well. And basically what I learned from them is they love America. They love Americans. I was working at EVOC at the time, so I took them on the emergency vehicle operations course at about 120 miles an hour, and they loved the hell out of that. But Poland is very pro-American, and I submit that it's Poland and Austria and Hungary that if anybody can push back this wave of leftism in Europe, I hold those countries out as being the potentials, though we're starting to already see, like you mentioned in the first hour, Ron Edwards, that France is now finally the French. Not the French elitists, not the people in power like Macron, but the French people are starting to get fed up with this junk. And it's moving to other countries as well, because you can only get so much blood from a rock. It's easy to say that you're an environmentalist. Heck, everybody's an environmentalist. Okay, give me $100 right now. Well, you might not be a complete environmentalist when people start dipping out of your wallet, not once or twice, but continuously. And it was people, ostensibly it was about fuel. Oh, no. Like you pointed out again on the first hour, it's much more than just the fuel tax. It hurts. When you make people hurt and you do it purposely, don't be surprised when there's pushback. And there's finally, I sense, some pushback beginning to occur in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Merkel is gone, I think. Thank God Merkel is gone.
Well, she's not gone yet, but her impact is still, it's horrible. But you know who else was a very cool people? The Serbians. On the side, one of my other first jobs in radio was I was a board op for a Serbian radio show.
Oh, okay.
And we became fast friends, and these people were very patriotic. And because I learned a lot of the history about the battles between the Croatians and the Serbians. And the Croatians, man, they supported like Hitler And I can single them out, and I can even base it on experience, very racist. And I used to wonder, why is it who are this segment of people in Cleveland who are very racist? And and I found out that was that Croatian community. And at the time, more Croatians lived in the Cleveland area than anywhere else in the world outside of Croatia.
Really?
And they were mean. I mean, we'd be on Liberty Boulevard, which is a beautiful parkway, and all the way something like Rock Creek Parkway in Washington, D.C., one of those kind of beautiful roadways. And they'd be throwing bricks at us from bridges. These huge, those old-fashioned, real super thick, heavy bricks, man. And never got hit, but then I found out those were the Croatians. And they're not just like that with blacks. They're just mean. And not all, but I mean a lot of them were back then. And the Serbians were the opposites. The Polish were the opposite. I grew up around the Polish. And sweet people. And Italians, now and that's an interesting bunch. Love the Italians. They can either hate you or love you. But even, and people mistake sometimes when you get into friction with people, they say, oh, they're just racist. No. Italians are tough guys. You know, they're like Trump on steroids. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, what's the story, man?
That's right.
You get out of my way.
That's right.
But if you fight back and you let them know, look, you may be Rocky Marciano, but I'm Joe Louis, and you'll have a hard way to go, buddy. They will respect you, and they'll be your best friend for life.
Yes.
And that's all. But you have to understand and how to maneuver and work and walk with people, and understand that it's not all about just you're racist. No, he could just be a jerk.
Well, and
you have to, and that's just human nature, and you have to just deal from that point.
Yes.
And you end up with so many more friends, and you end up with so much a better life than just you're racist. You need to be banned from life. You know, it's just crazy. But then again, it goes back to how I was brought up. I'll never forget. A couple of Midwest buddies came up to visit me in New York. And we were walking down, I think, 6th Avenue of the Americas, yeah. We're walking down, which is 6th Avenue. We're walking down the street, and we wanted to go, it was a particular place, and I asked this guy for direction. He says, well, you go down such and such, and you go down there. You don't know where the hell you're going? And he didn't say hell, I'm just being nice. And I said, I'll tell you where the hell I'm going, where you showing me. You're giving me directions. And so he and I are going back and forth, and my friends are looking at us like, man, you mean you take all that and you're just joking back and forth with this guy? I said, look, dude, it's not like you're seeing it.
No.
I said that it's just the New York way. I said, yes. I fell in love with it.
Yes.
I fit in.
Yes.
I got it. My dad had a cross-section of friends, and so I saw stuff growing up, and I got it. And so I had to explain to my buddies, dude, it's not, you know,
it's
just
not,
back off. No one will get hurt, okay?
It's not what you think it is.
And so you just have to, and New York, like I said, was such a great city. I just pray, and I literally mean this, I pray that either de Blasio dies or something, because he wants to kill that city. I don't know if you're aware that he said very recently that he wants to start being able to limit how tall buildings are, tell people where they can work. He believes in all of that.
That's anathema to New York. That's anathema to New York. It's New York City.
Yes. As Cousin Bruce used to say, the greatest city in the world. And, you know, I just, sometimes I get so angry. And then other days I'm just so sad because I see what's going on to the country, what people want to do to this country.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, when I learned about the hard way that people have an ingrained hatred for this country, and when I learned for the first time in my life that people, and I learned it by observing and talking to some of the people that live in the city of Detroit, they would rather see the country destroyed, and they have no opportunity for a good life, than for what is happening, a good economy, which takes away a lot of excuses for complaining about lack of opportunity, which means you have to do what? Partake of the blessing, which means you go out, start a business, or get a job, or in some cases both, because you might need a job to subsidize while you're building your business or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to do that. Oh, no, they want to sit home and be a part of destroying the country because they're so ensconced in bitterness. They're spiritually dead. And it wasn't until very recently that I, even as a Christian, I don't pretend to be Mr. Perfect, but even as a Christian, I finally, just very recently, thanks to the coaxing of my wife and people that are much better Christians than I am, to learn to pray for these people, that they get their spirits, that they get this spiritual darkness off of them, and that their eyes are opened to a much better life.
You're a better man than me. You are a better man than me, Gunga Din. I'll be the first to admit it. I have a quick New York story. We got 3 more minutes before the end of the show.
Okay.
Quick New York story. I worked for the FBI a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and I ended up working for WMFO, which is the Washington Metro Field Office. So while I'm over there, and that's a big, it's like the number 2 place instead of the FBI building. So one day I got it into my young brain that I was going to go and see New York City. I saw New York City for maybe 15 minutes. My very first introduction to New York City was, at the time, I didn't have a watch. So there's an NYPD mounted dude on a big old brown horse. Mistake number 1, walked up to the cop, the NYPD cop, and said, "Hey, I don't have a watch. You don't happen to have the time, do you?" He says, "What do I look? Like a friggin' sundial?" That was my introduction to New York City, to NYPD.
Yep.
But you got to love it. You got to play along with it. Ron Edwards, I got to have you back. Like I said, I got questions. I got questions. You got answers. You and I would love to sit down and we could talk about some stuff over radio. If nothing else, we could probably talk about radio for the next 3 or 4 hours. But I got to have you back. Now, let me ask you this, though. Do you have any idea when your book may be coming out?
No, in fact, I talked to my publisher yesterday. She's, we're doing the editing and all of that, so I can't say exactly when, but she wants to get it wrapped up sometime in the first half of 19. So.
Okay. All righty. Well, number 1, I got to have you back to promote the book, if nothing else. Number 2, so that's a promise from me to you, Ron Edwards. When you get your book out, you're going to be coming back to the show because I like to do that. I like to push stuff, and I'm a bad author, and I've never really published anything. But I love the hell out of authors, and I got a ton of authors on the show. So we got to have you back for that. And number 2, I'd like to have you back just for the heck of it because it's been a great time. Listen, I have 3 people that are in the chat room right now that they're on the East Coast, and after the first hour, they usually say something like, "Okay, BZ, well, I'll tell you what, I got to go. I'll listen to the rest of your show and podcast because I got to go nighty-night." Those 2 people who are on the East Coast who customarily leave after the first hour, Ron Edwards, they're still here. So I got to have you back. But before we go,
love to come back.
Tell folks where you can be found. Tell folks about your show and your social media so that folks can find you and listen to you. Please, sir.
Well, folks, please tune in tomorrow on AmericaMatters.us to the Ron Edwards Experience. It's also on SHR Media, Spreaker. And also, you can catch the Edwards Notebook on over 120 stations starting next Monday. I believe also the Edwards Notebook is on your show, isn't it?
It's going to be starting this Tuesday. That's absolutely correct. It's a 5-minute piece?
No, it's only 90 seconds, just a quick commentary.
Okay, all righty.
And,
then the answer is yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I think I sent some already, but you got them, and then I'll continue to send more.
Please.
But, yeah. And so you can also catch my columns. I do write a weekly column for newswithviews.com and CapitolHillOutsider.com. Two fairly sizable websites. I write for them. And in fact, I'm going to also put a book compilation of lots of years of columns that I've written as well, that people have requested me to do that as well. You can catch me on Facebook at Friends of the Edwards Notebook. Hit me up there. On Twitter, follow me there, at the Ron Edwards on Twitter. And I'm on LinkedIn. Let's see, where else? I also am a keynote speaker. If there's anyone out there who is looking for a good speaker for their event, I'm available. We have a good time.
Cool.
And you can contact me at ronedwards@edwardsnotebook.com, which is my email address. And so I guess that's it for right now. There may be more, but can't think of it.
Ron Edwards.
It's 1 a.m.
Yeah, no kidding. Now it really is a serious time to go to bed. Listen, sir, I have had such a great time on the show, and you're not in chat, so you didn't see this, but while I was in chat, and I don't know, I'm bigfooting myself again. While I was in chat, I was saying, boy, I really like this guy. And the people in chat are going, yeah, we really like him too. And I said, I wonder if I can get him for another 15 minutes. That was at the end of the first hour. And so I said, let me ask him. Maybe I can get him for another 15 minutes. So I did. I got you for another 15 minutes. Then I said, went back in chat, and then I said, hey, maybe I can get him for another half hour. What do you think? Should I try to get him for another? And everybody in chat said, yeah, get him for another half hour. So I got you to stay to the bottom of the hour. And then I knew I had you hooked. And then I thought, okay, what do you give me, guys, if I try to get him for the full 2 hours? And everybody in chat said, yeah, see if you can get him for the full 2 hours. So, yeah, I won. But I still got to have you back. I had a great time tonight. I still got a ton of questions. And folks, you got to listen to Ron Edwards, the Ron Edwards Experience, the Ron Edwards Notebook.
I didn't give a time, did I?
Please.
For the show tomorrow.
Please.
The show is 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's on AmericanMatters.us, Spreaker, and, of course, on SHR Media. So those three entities. If you're in the Reno area, it's KCKQ, AM 1180. And also Saturdays at, I think it's 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Is that Utah? On KYAH.
Yeah, I think Mountain Time is going to be Utah.
KYAH, AM 540 on the weekends, and on the radio stations of Talk America Radio Network at midnight or 12 a.m. Sundays. I guess they have about 3 or 4 radio stations, but yeah. So anyway, but they'll catch me live, and you can call in. There's a call number. I'll be announcing it during the show. You guys can call in. It's live, and so we'll have a good time there, too. Tomorrow at 4 Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific, and it's the Ron Edwards Experience on AmericanMatters.us or SHR Media.
Folks, we've been listening to Ron Edwards from the Ron Edwards Experience and the Ron Edwards Notebook. Thank you again, ever so kindly, for staying up late, for being a kick-butt kind of guy. You've engaged everybody, and I got to have you back. So good night, sir. Thank you for staying up so late. God bless. You take care, sir. Be safe.
All right. God bless you, and God bless America, and may America bless God.
No kidding.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Folks, that was Ron Edwards. What a great time I had tonight, and with luck, you had a great time too.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. Live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. And also by Pratt & Whitney Engines. Thrust, you can trust. Tiaras by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting in less than an hour. By the way, I'm going to be coming out with some T-shirts from the Zepp Works, and I'll be wearing them on the show in the not-too-terribly distant future. Thanks to Ron Edwards for being here for the entire 2 hours. I pulled it off. I said I'd do it, and I did it. Folks, be back next Tuesday. I'm going to have Captain Ed Enos on the show. Captain Ed Enos? Yeah, he's a real ship captain. So, God bless. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob. Go to sleep.
Good night, and good luck.